Okay, so I want to welcome everyone, and I want to welcome Avi. I want to thank him so much. I know he is a pretty busy guy. Um, Avi Abelow is the founder and CEO of Pulse of Israel, a platform unlike any other offering cutting edge, unapologetic analysis of today's headlines through the lens of Jewish destiny. He began his professional journey as a management consultant, later becoming a film producer, producing the acclaimed movie Home Game, which captured the emotional final youth basketball tournament in Gush Katif during the summer of 2005, just before the Israeli disengagement from Gaza. Avi still serves as an IDF reserve soldier in this war and is a passionate media entrepreneur on a mission not just to inform, but to awaken. Through the Pulse of Israel program and his news website, israelandwired.com, he helps Jews around the world internalize our purpose, our potential, and our divine role as a sovereign nation restored in our ancestral homeland. Pulse of Israel isn't just news, and it isn't just advocacy. It's the front line of the Jewish story unfolding in real time. And with that, I feel privileged and honored to have Avi. Thank you, Avi.
Thank you, Naomi. Thank you so much for everyone for being here today and joining this Zoom with me. It is a pleasure being able to have your audience. There is so much to say, but I want to keep it as short as possible in order to take as many questions as possible from everyone who's taking the time to join the Zoom call today. So I'm going to do my best. And it is very, very opportune time to help explain exactly the niche that our voice at the Pulse of Israel fills for the Jewish people today. Because again, even though I have people all over the world, Jews and non-Jews, who watch and listen to our Pulse of Israel programming, the most important people to reach with these messages are the Jews and the Jewish people. Because our future is up to us. I'm a big believer, and these are the messages that my wife and I give over to our children. All their lives. One got married last year, one got married 3 weeks ago, another's getting married in 2 weeks. Please God. So hopefully they're going to carry on these messages as well as they establish their families in Beit Neman B'Yisrael here in Eretz Yisrael. But we're big believers that Hakadosh Baruch Hu expects us to be partners with Him. Where we're not supposed to be somech al hanes. We're not supposed to wait for God to provide miracles for us. He's waiting for us to do what we're supposed to do, and then He's a partner with us. We're supposed to be a partner with Him. And it's hard for us to expect a bright, positive future for the Jewish people if we don't take seriously our partnership. I mean, one of the simplest things that I tell Jews every day whenever I speak is those of us who daven 3 times a day or twice a day or once a day, and definitely during the Chagim, during Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, we daven HaKadosh Baruch Hu, recognizing the centrality of the temple, the Beit HaMikdash, to our lives back then, and Sheibana Beit HaMikdash, that we want to rebuild it. 1967 came and went. We liberated not just Judea and Samaria, the Sinai and the Golan Heights. We liberated all of Jerusalem, finally under Jewish sovereignty for the first time in thousands of years. We liberated the Temple Mount, and we're more than 50 years later, and the Jewish people still, and I'm not even talking about non-religious, religious. How many are seriously thinking that we should be aspiring to rebuild our temple? And the importance and centrality of the temple, the Beit HaMikdash, is supposed to be for us as a nation to also impact humanity. How many of us are educating our children in that way? How many of our educational institutions are? This is one little thing. How many of our rabbis are talking about that in synagogues? I believe it's close to zero. So how can HaKadosh Baruch Hu, how can we expect Him to provide us miracles and to fulfill our purpose as a nation, being back in our ancestral homeland, if we ourselves are not even educating ourselves or educating our children to understand who we're supposed to be as a nation, living back in our ancestral homeland to achieve that. Unfortunately, most of the Jewish people today, we're waiting for the miracles, whether we acknowledge it or not. We're waiting for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to provide the miracles for us because we're not truly internalizing who we are and what our purpose is. And that's the voice that we provide. And I'll give it to you on a current events issue right now, happening right before our eyes. As we speak, Israel is attacking the airport in Yemen. As we speak. Okay? Now, if you would have asked me, Israel should have been attacked, and we're attacking the airport, meaning they attacked our airport, we're attacking their airport. We've been living under rocket fire from the Houthis, the Iranian-backed Houthis in Yemen, for over a year. This attack should have happened a year ago, not now. And not only that, we all know the people behind the Houthis is Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran. Israel should have done whatever was necessary against Iran over a year ago. There's no reason the Jewish people should be under rocket fire from an Iranian-backed proxy for over a year on Shabbat. We were woken up Shabbat morning. My family, my wife and I, we heard the siren. We were the only ones home for Shabbat. We had to run to our safe room at 6:40 in the morning. I was looking forward to get up for Minyan anyway, but I did not want to get up to Minyan because of a rocket attack from Yemen. What's the point I'm trying to make? The Jewish people have to understand God gave us a purpose. There's a reason HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the Torah. There's a reason in the Torah he tells us we're supposed to live in Israel. There's a reason we're supposed to live according to the Torah in Israel as a nation. And part of that is realizing we are an essential aspect of this region. L'taken olam b'malchut shakai. How are we supposed to fix the world? By giving water to children in Africa? That's a nice thing to do. And Jews can do that as well. But that's not our purpose of the Jewish people. You don't have to be Jewish in order to help the children in Africa. You don't have to be Jewish to help the poor and needy in your own community. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful thing to do as well as a Jew or as a Jewish community. But that's not our purpose. L'taken olam malchut shakai. You go through the Torah. It's simple. We're supposed to be a Jewish nation connected to God in our homeland. And that way we make a difference in the world. So how do we make a difference in the world, connecting it to current events? It's understanding we are supposed to be a strong people here in this region as a regional power in order not just to protect the Jews, to protect any and all freedom-loving people, minorities in the region. Because unfortunately, we live in a region, it's not just a region, it's now all over the world, where you have Sunni jihadists who are educated to murder everybody in the name of Allah, and you have Shia jihadists who are educated to kill everybody in the name of Allah at our doorstep, all around us. The Druze in Syria are being massacred right now. There's only one force in the world who has the ability and has the desire to protect them. That's the Jewish state of Israel. I imagine most of you, if not all of you, are in the United States of America. Guess what? America doesn't want to do anything to protect the Jews in Syria who are being massacred right now. Not only that, European politicians, American politicians, a U.S. politician, congressman was just in Syria last week, if I'm not mistaken, or 2 weeks ago, shaking the hand of the new leader of Syria, who is a Taliban, ISIS, Al-Qaeda guy, who was responsible for the massacring of Alawites, Christians, and Druze taking place now. Yet the Western world is so sick and tired and so neutered at a value-based level, this progressivism, which I really call regressive, they're willing to whitewash actual massacres of whole peoples and ignore the reality on the ground. And there's only one people in the world who have the ability and the desire to want to protect those people being massacred right now in Syria. And that's the Jewish people. The Jewish state of Israel. But even the Jewish state of Israel, we're not doing everything we should be doing to protect the Jews. And it's not just about protecting the Jews in Syria. It's about protecting Israel. Because if we do not do what's necessary in southern Syria, and that the Druze and the Alawites and the Christians in southern Syria are always threatened of massacre and genocide. Well, those enemies have already said after they massacre everyone in Syria, their next stop is Jerusalem. They want to massacre all of us. So we must do what we must do in southern Syria, not just to protect the Druze, but to protect us. And how do you protect? You protect by not just bombing every once in a while the bad guys, you take over the land. Guess what? Another thing we're not being taught, that our children are not being taught in school, the biblical borders of Israel. It's all in the Tanakh. It's all in Chumash. How many of our kids are actually learning what the biblical borders are and understanding? One day, these are going to be the borders. I have no problem with a teacher in any institution saying, you know what? These are the borders. And the borders include most of Lebanon, much of Syria, Jordan, Sinai. Look at the biblical borders HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us in the Torah. I'm not making anything up. And I have no problem with a rabbi in shul or a teacher in school. These are the biblical borders that we're supposed to have. Don't be embarrassed by them. One day we're going to achieve them. How we're going to achieve them? I don't know. When we're going to achieve them? I don't know. But why should we be embarrassed? Why should our children be embarrassed that we live in Judea and Samaria? That we're supposed to live in Gaza? And for those of you who don't know, I don't know how many of you sing the song Curry Bone every Friday night at the Shabbat table. And it's so sad to me that most Jews don't even know. The song Curry Bone was written by Rav Yisrael Nejara in the 17th century in Gaza City, where he was the chief rabbi of Gaza City. How many Jews know that? We sing this song every Friday night. And still today, you have Jews, you have rabbis, you have communities who won't even talk about Jews going back to resettle the Gaza Strip, which is Jewish land and historic biblical Jewish land for us to live in, because it's not politically correct, and our children are not being taught that it's our land. You see how we're being so somech on the nace for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to do so many things, because we're not doing what is necessary for ourselves, for our communities, for our children. I mean, think about this. If every Jewish child knew that Curry Bone was written by the chief rabbi of Gaza City in the 17th century, and hence and then also the biblical background of the Jewish connection to Gaza, and then from the Bible throughout history until 2005, when the close to 10,000 Jews were expelled from their homes and the 21 Jewish communities destroyed, don't you think they'd have a little more pride and self-confidence in standing up for themselves, whether on the street, whether in universities, whether in their schools, if they had the proper knowledge about our true history and identity? I think it's pshita. I think it's clear. If our children are being taught properly, they'd be able to deal with the growing Jew hatred, a tsunami of Jew hatred based on lies and based on a narrative that's all about stealing our Jewish identity and our eternal connection to our ancestral homeland. And on the one hand, it saddens me, but that's the role that saddens me, that we're not being educated enough. Our educational institutions, our nonprofit organizations, our synagogues, not enough rabbis. So that's what the Pulse of Israel is. We are a voice to fill a void of giving an analysis of current events to inspire as many Jews as possible, and non-Jews as well, but especially the Jews, to strengthen their true, authentic Jewish identity and understand its connections to current events today, so that we all understand God is waiting for us. He's doing miracles for us every single day. I always tell people, the existence of the Jewish state of Israel is 2 major miracles and millions of tiny miracles. What are the 2 major miracles? Major miracle number 1, we exist on a daily basis, surrounded by billions of people educated from their mother's milk to destroy us. right? I always tell people, we're in the 77th year of our War of Independence. It didn't happen in 1948. We're still living it. And again, this is other Jewish history. I don't know how many people know. The Hanukkah story, we celebrate for 8 days. And you ask people, well, how long did the Hanukkah story actually take place? How long was the war against the Syrian Greeks? How long did the Maccabees fight? Until the end of the Hanukkah story. So we're not taught that. So people think, oh, 8 days, right? Because Hanukkah's 8 days, a year. No, it was like over 10-year war. But how many of us understand that? How many of our children understand that? Meaning some battles we won, some battles we lost. Same thing today. The War of Independence never ended. We're still fighting that same war. It's the same enemy, just every time they just change their names and faces. And it's never been the Palestinians because they've never had an army to fight us, right? That's a fake entity that was created to give legitimacy to hate us and terrorize us. But there's never been a Palestinian entity that's fought us. 1948. It was the Arab countries surrounding us. 1967, the Arab countries surrounding us. 1973, the Arab countries surrounding us. It was only after our enemies, our what I call Islamo-Nazi enemies, failed time after time to destroy us in conventional warfare, that they then came up with this strategy to create this identity called Palestinians. And again, this is more information that our children are not taught. How many of you know that the whole identity called Palestinian was created by the KGB in the 1960s, not necessarily as a way to hurt Israel, but as a way to hurt the United States? Because Israel at the time was a growing power in the Middle East, and it was hurting the hegemony of Russia, of the USSR at the time. And they thought, oh, the way we can hurt America is by hurting Israel and creating this false identity called Palestinians. And they took Yasser Arafat, who was living in Egypt, and they said, okay, and they taught him everything about how to terrorize. And that's how we have this identity called Palestinians today. And yet so many Jews and religious institutions have normalized the entity called Palestinians as if that's a real nation with a real claim to our ancestral homeland, when they're not a real nation. They have no claim to live here, and yet we're always playing defense. We should be on the offense. They don't exist. Stop telling me we have the two-state solution. They're not a people, no claim to our land. We're created by the Russians in the 1960s. Give me a break. We want to live peacefully. Millions of Arab Muslims live peacefully in Israel as Israeli citizens. Anyone who wants to live in peace with us, Ahlan v'sahlan, let them live in peace with us. But Judea and Samaria, Gaza, Golan Heights, northern Israel in southern Lebanon, northern Israel in southern Syria, anyone who wants to live in peace with us is welcome to live in peace with us. Anyone who wants to kill us and educates their children to kill us has to live elsewhere. Right? How many of us are being educated? How many of us are being educated with this information to be able to properly move forward, not just as the Jewish state of Israel and the politicians in Israel, but as the Jewish people, and to be united in our purpose of who we are as a people, and our purpose in being in back as sovereign in our ancestral homeland. So that is the niche and the void that we try to fill on a daily basis. And I want people to feel inspired, because the daily headlines are so depressing and so demoralizing and so dividing. But if people just don't pay attention to the headlines and they recognize the reality on the ground, there is so much to be inspired about. So I said there were two major miracles and millions of small miracles. Major miracle number one is that we exist at all. Major miracle number two is that the Jewish state of Israel today is more Jewish with each and every day, despite the fact that anyone who truly understands the history of what really is the third Jewish Commonwealth, which is the modern state of Israel, like we just celebrated Yom Ha'atzmaut. I tell everyone, yeah, Yom Ha'atzmaut was the 77th birthday of the modern state of Israel, but we're 77 years young. We're 3,500 plus years old. The 77 years is just the latest sovereignty of the Jews in our homeland. That's not how long we have been here in our ancestral homeland. We're 3,500 years. But those mostly responsible for the establishment of the Jewish state of Israel 77 years ago were not the religious Jews, because most of the religious communities and rabbis told Jews not to move to Israel before 1948 because it was the socialists, anti-Jewish leaders and organizations, who were then called the Zionists mostly, who were actively involved in building up a state. And unfortunately, it was most of the rabbis and religious communities who told their followers, don't go. Whether they said go to America or stay in Europe. And most of them were massacred, exterminated in Europe because they were so afraid of going to an Israel being developed by socialists not necessarily friendly to Judaism Jews that they preferred to stay in Europe or go elsewhere or go to America. So that's, and ever since, for 77 years, that core of the socialist Israel, and I live here. I made Aliyah in 1990. I'm very familiar with Israel. I tell every Jew to come live here, send your children here, send your grandchildren here. The future of the Jewish people is here. And that's knowing we still have this challenge that a power center of Israel, no matter who we elect in elections, but in the unelected bureaucracy, still holds this power of people who are the children and grandchildren of those socialists who did not have a friendly attitude towards Judaism, and they pull the strings behind the scenes. And despite the fact that they've been pulling the strings behind the scenes for 77 years, the Jewish state of Israel is becoming more Jewish and more Jewish every single day. And whenever people tell me, oh, I can't move to Israel because of this problem or this problem, or children or this or that, and I'm like, what, you think you're supposed to be Jewish just to follow Taryag mitzvot living wherever you are? No, 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 no. You're supposed to be Jewish to follow as many as best as possible Taryag mitzvot in the land of Israel, where you're part of the miraculous project in developing the Jewish state of Israel to be the light into the nations we're supposed to be. What, it's just automatically supposed to, you're only going to come because it's perfect? No. Whenever I tell people and try to encourage them to make Aliyah, I tell them, listen, when you finally make that decision to make Aliyah, that's not the end of your process as a Jew. That's your first step as a process as a Jew returning to Israel to now be part of this miraculous project of making the Jewish sovereign state of Israel a light into the nations. Because there's a lot of work to do. A lot. And obviously, the more religious Jews we have here, who have the backing and understanding of the importance of a Jewish state of Israel, in addition to the importance of Torah and Torah life to the Jewish people, the easier and the sooner we'll be able to make those changes here in this country. So those are the two big miracles. And what are the millions of tiny miracles? We're now 19 months into this war. I mean, I could speak for hours about the miracles that have taken place in this war. And despite a failure of leadership at all levels, not because of it, God is pulling the strings and doing things for us every single moment. Every single moment. Whether it's to the actual battles, to people being saved or not being saved. Yes, not everyone can be saved. God is not providing miracles that every single person is saved, but still miracles do happen of people being saved or in battles. Every single moment. But the major little miracles of this war, I'll give you a few. All right. And I've been talking about this since October 8th. And last week I heard for the first time Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu mentioned this. Until then, he never said a word about this. October 7th, sorry, let's rephrase. The attack by our Islamo-Nazi enemies on October 7th was supposed to be a strategic, multi-pronged attack from the whole Middle East. It was supposed to be Hamas shooting rockets at us, Hezbollah shooting rockets at us, the Houthis in Yemen shooting rockets at us, Iranian proxies in Syria shooting rockets at us, Iran shooting rockets at us, ground troops coming in from Gaza and Hamas, ground troops coming in from Hezbollah from the north. It was supposed to be a bloodbath. A bloodbath. Israel was supposed to be destroyed, if not hundreds of thousands, millions killed. And it's crazy to say this, but the miracle is that Hamas decided to attack alone without coordinating with Iran, who was the mastermind of this strategy. That's been the strategy they've been working on for decades. For decades. And only God knows why Hamas decided to attack alone. So with all of the pain and the sadness and the trauma of what we experienced on October 7th, and that we're still experiencing today, with 59 hostages still being held in Gaza, I personally do not like everyone putting the focus on the 59 hostages, because we have to save them. We have to save them, and the government of Israel is doing everything it can to save them. That's why we're still at war in 19 months, which makes no sense whatsoever. We've been doing this so slowly. But to ignore the fact of the miracles that have taken place in this war, specifically on October 7th itself, that only Hamas attacked, that only 1,200 Jews were massacred and not hundreds of thousands or millions, that only 250 were taken hostage. Yes, every life is a world, and we still put focus on that. But too many people are putting focus on the sadness and the trauma and of those not with us, and not enough people are putting the focus on the hakarat hatov, on being thankful to the miracles that God did for us on that day, that it was only that amount and not much worse, even the total destruction of Israel. I mean, to me, that's mind-blowing. And I want people to understand that and appreciate. And even while we pray that the 59 hostages be saved and return to their lives, those dead to be buried, those alive return to their lives, we have so much to be thankful for. And do you know what would have happened to world Jewry if instead of 1,200 people massacred in Israel, hundreds of thousands, or Israel destroyed? There would have been a bloodbath of Jews in the streets across the West. Because all of a sudden, if you thought that, and again, I have to emphasize this, the protests in the streets of America and London and Toronto and Paris, they did not start with the Israeli counterattack on Hamas, which started like 3-4 weeks later. There were already protests in the streets of Manhattan, on Columbia University, and colleges across America, and in streets across America on October 7th. They were not, and I don't know how many people I have to remind this to, and if you forgot it, remember, this is so important. They were not protesting Israel's counterattack and a starvation in Gaza and children being killed in Gaza. They were celebrating the massacre of Jews on October 7th and October 8th, out in the streets, out on college campuses. And that's only with 1,200 Jews being massacred. If Israel would have been destroyed, hundreds of thousands would have been killed that day. There would have been a bloodbath in the streets of cities across the world of Jews. Would have been a Purim story without the happy ending of the Purim story. Because you, again, focus on October 7th and October 8th. There was a euphoria in the air that Jews were being massacred in the cities where you live, across the Western, liberal, progressive, intellectual world that you all live. And it's a miracle that what happened on October 7th only was what happened and not far, far worse. And it's always important to keep that into perspective. I'm a big person on understanding history and putting things into perspective. Not getting myself crazy, not euphoric crazy, and not sad crazy. Put things in perspective. When you read the headline news, if you're not listening to me on a daily basis, on your own, put things into perspective. If you are listening to me on a daily basis, then I'll help you put things into perspective. But that is one of the major, major miracles. And I'll touch upon a second miracle from October 7th for a second. And then I'll change topics. One of the issues that's going to be discussed at some point in time is getting down to understand why the Israeli army was not there to do what was necessary to stop the invasion on October 7th and why it took hours to appear. I'm not going into that now, but I'm focusing on the miracle, on the Hakarat Tov. And this has to do with more of the partnership than a miracle. But to me, I like phrasing it in a way for us to understand the bigger events going on. And it's a miraculous process. Even though the army was not there and not ready for hours, there were hundreds of what I call King David-like Jews who ran down south, whether they had a uniform or didn't have a uniform, whether they had a gun or didn't have a gun, and ran into the fire to fight against those Islamo-Nazi terrorists in the kibbutzim and in the communities and save as many lives as they could. No orders from the army, no organized units, individuals. What's the miracle? And this is the process that's miraculous that I want you to internalize. We are blessed to live in the sovereign Jewish state of Israel, where children are being raised to be proud, to stand up for themselves as Jews, to be proud to save Jewish lives, to be proud to know how to use a gun if necessary and do what is necessary. And so much so, and it's this generation living in Israel. It happens living in Israel. That's why I tell parents, why do you want to send your kids to universities in America with a growing Jew hatred and anti-Semitism, where instead of spending time studying, they're spending time trying to fight and defend themselves? Send your kids to university in Israel. Send them to be lone soldiers in Israel, or not to be lone soldiers in Israel. Join them. Send them to do national service and be givers and be part of the Jewish people. There's a natural atmosphere of living in your ancestral indigenous homeland that seeps into the DNA of your children when they're here. And so even though our great, unbelievable, high-tech army that should have been able to do what it was supposed to do on October 7th, it wasn't, and it didn't, but the massacre was stopped from being even worse because they were planning on going to Kiryat Gat and mass massacres in Sderot and Netivot, and they were stopped because of hundreds of King David-like Jews who are blessed to live and have the right spirit and the right training to do what's necessary to protect the Jewish people, even though they didn't get any orders to do so. So I get chills myself when I talk about this. But so those are in terms of the miracles of the Jewish state of Israel today. I'm just giving like some of the tiny ones because again, on a daily basis, there are tons of miracles. But the bottom line is that, and I'll end with this. A few ending points. I just spoke to a group of high school students from Frisch over Shabbat. And one of the things I was telling them, I was asking, how would you explain to me a major difference between juniors and seniors in America and juniors and seniors in Israel? Okay, what's the answer? And again, I made Aliyah after junior year in high school in America, so I know what it's like to be a junior and a senior in America. And you're basically focused on meetings with your college guidance professor, your college guidance advisor, up in your grades, AP courses, all about wanting to get to the best university as possible, the best grades as possible. If I get accepted, trying to get there as quickly as possible. I don't want to lose deferment. If I go to Israel for a year, I can't stay a second year. I got to get to university. I'm like, okay, that's America. Now let's go to Israel. 17 and 18-year-old kids in Israel. What are they focused on? They're focused on, what am I going to do? How am I going to help the Jewish people when I finish high school? Am I going to go to the army? I'm not going to go to the army. If I go to the army, am I going to go to combat unit? Can I go to a combat unit? Army's not for me. Guy or girl, am I going to do national service? Am I going to do national service in a hospital, in a school, in a youth movement, helping security? And again, for girls nowadays, national service is, not only is it done for 1 year, many girls stay to do a second year. And then many girls, after 1 or 2 years of national service, they then want to go learn some Torah like guys do, either before or after. Like my son's Kala, who's getting married in two weeks, please God. She spent 2 years doing national service. Now she's a year studying Torah at a mechina. Now she's getting married. It's like, and then after all this, then we go to university. I did Hesder. So I finished my junior year of high school in America. I did early admission, went straight to yeshiva to learn Torah. Then I went to Hesder program. I only started college when I was 22, 23 years old. Friday night, I was sitting at the table with a guy who's in the middle of med school, third year med school, after 5 years as an officer in the Israeli army.
Wow.
And I'm talking to these kids. I'm like, where are you running to in life? Life's a rat race. You're going to be working the rest of your life. Now's your chance to learn Torah for a year or two or however long in a yeshiva program or a right program for you, not for school grades, but for yourself. Who are you as a Jew? What does Torah mean to you? Do you really know Torah? Now's your opportunity. Why be focused on running back to university because you have to get a job? You're going to be working the rest of your life. Isn't it nice to spend some time? You're never going to have another opportunity like this. You start going to university, you start a job, responsibilities, marriage, children, bills to pay, worries on your head. Never again in your life are you going to have this moment to be able to just sit and learn and grow or be a giver to the Jewish people. And here in Israel, it's like built in the system. It's automatic. Not everyone necessarily goes for a year of learning before they go to the army. But it's in the system that you're a giver. Even if you go army or national service, you're not just thinking about yourself and your job. And I was just trying to inspire these kids. Like whatever they decide, there's no right or wrong. Everyone has to make the right decisions for themselves. But at least to connect to the natural atmosphere and Jewish society that we have here in Israel that they can be a part of. And it's not, and here I'm talking about in terms of as a young Jew, in terms of learning Torah or giving to the people of Israel in whatever which way makes sense for them. But then on the other way, I grew up in New York City. I know New York City. I know America. And I asked them, okay, what's the most exciting time in the year to be in New York City? I mean, I think it's pretty simple. Hands down, it's like Christmas and New Year's time. You walk the streets, jingle bells everywhere, cheer in the air, even people who won't necessarily be nice to you are nice to you. Lights, it's exciting. You just, I don't know how many of you know New York City or everyone else, definitely New York City, but there's an excitement in the air. And of course, if you're in an area with lots of Jews like New York, all right, so every once in a while you see stores with a Chanukiah as well next to the tree. But we grow up like that thinking that's normal. No, that's not normal. What's normal is being a Jew living in a society where the whole country celebrates Hanukkah, right, where the whole country celebrates Sukkot, where the whole country celebrates Pesach. And it might not be every single Jew does, and it doesn't necessarily mean every single house has a Chanukiah, but the atmosphere in the whole country is our atmosphere. It's our culture. The national calendar is the Jewish calendar.
Right.
Why would I want to live in a place where I'm really a second-class citizen and convince myself that I'm not? And the last point I tell over to these when I speak to kids, especially, I'm like, listen, everyone tell me where are your grandparents from? Some of your grandparents are from America, that's fine. But even though, where are your great-grandparents from? All right, Germany, Poland, Lithuania, Russia, Ukraine. Now tell me, where were their great-grandparents or great-grandparents from? Probably not from those same towns or villages or areas. Came from other places. There's a reason we're called the Wandering Jews. And as we are Jews today, blessed to have grown up in the West, especially as a New Yorker, as an American, in the Golden Medina, that is probably the best Gullus, exile ever for the Jewish people, we're not Americans.
Right.
We're Jews who happen to be blessed to live in America and have American citizenship at this moment. But I promise you, most of your grandchildren are not going to be religious Jews living in America with American citizenship anymore because America is changing. And not only that, I'm a student of history. And when I speak to youth, collegiates and youth, I always tell them the most important thing besides Torah to learn is history, especially Jewish history, Holocaust history, modern Israeli history, biblical history, Tanakh, regular history. Learn history. One of the most important lessons that Jews fail to internalize. And again, I tell everyone, don't trust me, learn your history, and challenge me if I'm wrong. Every single uh, exile, the major incident that was a destruction of a Jewish community and kicking us out of the land was not when we were poor and destitute. It's when we successfully integrated and assimilated into those societies. Let's start with Nazi Germany. And again, anyone push me, your history, push back on me. The Jews were totally integrated into German society before the Nazis came. I mean, religious Jews called Berlin the New Jerusalem, thinking we never needed a Jerusalem again, we just needed Berlin. And then most of the Jewish community in Germany, as America, was assimilated, not religious anymore. We made it. We made it into the political system, we made it into the legal system, we made it into the medical system. We made it. And then came the Holocaust. You go back to the Spanish Inquisition. Who was one of the chief economic finance advisors to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella during the time of the expulsion, Spanish Inquisition? Abarbanel, a rabbi, one of the rabbis in the Torah. They loved him so much. They said, "No, Rabbi, we'll give you a pass. You don't have to leave. Just like pretend that you're a Christian or whatever it is that they tried to get him to stay." And he's like, "No, you don't want me. You don't want the Jews. I'm out of here." We integrated, we assimilated successfully, and then came the Spanish Inquisition. And I always tell people, I want Jews to move home to Israel for one reason and one reason only, because it's home. But when I see the growing Jew hatred, and at the same time, I see the headlines in Jewish newspapers celebrating, oh, this Jewish kid is now in the NBA, or this Jewish kid is now in the National Baseball League, or this Jewish kid is now in the Football League. I'm not happy. To me, that's the warning bells. Warning saying, we integrated so successfully, that's where the downfall's coming. It's in the DNA of Jewish history. So I always tell people, I don't want anyone coming to live in America or coming to live in Israel or telling their children to think about coming to Israel or serving in the army or going to university in order to escape the growing Jew hatred in America. No, no, no. I want them coming home because they understand this is home for them, for their children, with all the challenges, with all the hardships. There are challenges and are hardships. And it's our role to be here in order to make a difference for the Jewish people and turn the third Commonwealth Jewish state of Israel into the light of the nations we're supposed to be. But every once in a while, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God above, gives us a kick in the tuchus, and that's Jew hatred. So if it's not coming home because it's home, at least allow the Jew hatred boiling around us to wake you all up and realize, I should be thinking of going home because it's home. So I don't know how many of you have children or grandchildren thinking about going to universities or what to do regarding Israel or in high school or whatever, but the sooner and the stronger you educate them and instill in pride and the values of the importance of the Jewish state of Israel to their Jewish identity and to want to come home because they understand it's home, and to whether be the first or the second, or your shaliach, your messenger, to begin the return of your family to Israel, I highly advise going in that direction. I'll end with this inspiring story, personal story. My father was a very, very well-known, well-respected, well-sought-out principal for Jewish high schools in America before we made Aliyah, and grew up in New York City and then moved to Baltimore. He was brought in to found a high school in Baltimore. And then when he was looking for his next challenge, he was being courted by many cities, Jewish communities around America. And my parents at the time were thinking, you know what, maybe we'll go to Israel. Maybe now's the time to bring the family to Israel, because that was always talked about, even though a lot of Jewish families talk about it, never necessarily do anything about it. But they finally said, here, we're at a point where we can make a change. We have to move anyway, looking for the next challenge. Maybe we'll move home to Israel. The second my parents told me that, all of a sudden I got a bug in my head. I'm like, oh my God, I was very excited. And my father was then flown out to all these different cities with my mother to check out all these different communities, to be a principal in all these schools. And one city in particular really wanted him, Los Angeles, really wanted him. They were throwing money at him. And to me, I was even as a 15-year-old, because I was 15 turning 16 in 11th grade. I was very value oriented, very, very strong Jewish identity. Came back from March of the Living in 11th grade. Already had a deep understanding of Jewish history and the Holocaust and the importance of Israel and all that. When I heard that Los Angeles was throwing money at my father for us to move there and for him to be a principal there, I said, Abba, Ima, if you guys move to Sin City, and forgive me, anyone from Los Angeles, that's what I called Los Angeles as a 15, 16-year-old. But if you move to Sin City, I'm making Aliyah without you. And my parents said, all right, that's it. That's decided. We're going to Israel. And we started as a family of six. My father, my mother, me, my three siblings. It was very, very hard for my mother. My mother is one of three sisters. We all lived together in the New York, New Jersey area, New York, Queens, Teaneck, Englewood, all Chagim, all together. It was very, very hard for my mother to leave that and all of a sudden to be disconnected from her sisters and the whole family life. And my grandmother and grandfather were still alive in the New York, New Jersey area. I don't know. I'm sure all of you remember 1990, no internet, no smartphones. Long distance calls from Israel to America were exorbitant. So the disconnect was felt very, very much, not like today. And I remember one day my mother was sitting and crying, missing her sisters, missing the family connection, being involved and connected. And I told her, Ima, listen, by us living here, little by little, with our family realizing that this is real life, it's not a vacation destination anymore. Our family are no longer going to treat Israel like Disneyland. They're going to treat it like, oh my God, we have family who live here. We're visiting them in their own home, in their own community, going to shul, going shopping. Little by little, our family are going to come join us. Today, 35 years later, I have to actually figure out the exact percentage, but I believe 98% of our whole family now live in Israel. Both of my mother's sisters have moved here. Only three cousins are left back in America, and one is coming this summer. Going to leave only two from both sides of the family, my father and mother's side. Only two cousins are going to be left in America. We're now a tribe of close to 70. Replanted our future for our family tribe back in our ancestral homeland. And I didn't know that it would actually happen when I told that to my mother, but I'm very glad that it has happened. It's still happening. And it's not always easy. I see people are asking questions here. Nomi, can I start asking questions to people who wrote
Yeah,
questions?
so I just Avi, I just want to, first of all, I want to ask you a contentious question, but before
Please.
I get to that, it's so interesting, you talk about moving to Eretz Yisrael. I have this discussion with people all the time, and it's not my first time here. My parents made Aliyah when I was also my last year of high school. I met and married my husband here, who was a Chayil Boded, and it was at a time when, exactly like you talked, I think inflation was 400%. It was like almost impossible. You couldn't
Yeah.
go to university, right? And then we tried again 18 years later. I mean, 18 years ago with my kids, whatever, it was just too difficult. My husband had to go back and forth. And 3.5 years ago, we came back. We have two children here. And what's interesting is that I always say to people, because I hear many different things, just like you do. It's too difficult. The school systems, I'm not going to have the things that I have there. And my answer is always like this. If we would take the trillions of dollars of infrastructure that we Jews have built around the world through our institutions and our synagogues and our mikvahs and our buildings and our schools, the $10 million shuls and all the money that goes into it. If we would do that here, right? If we would do that here, could you imagine what this country would be? In a way, the way that I look at it is that Hashem gave the Jews a certain level of talent and light. And we're actually we're giving that light and that talent to the nations of the world. We're giving it away, right? So people say to me, someone said to me today, yeah, but look at all the money that Jews made in Chutz La'aretz. They wouldn't have made that money. And I said, yeah, there's a semblance of that. But on the other hand, despite everything, look at the tech, look at the startup nation, look at everything that's been built here despite, right? And then it's like, yeah, but look what we did. We gave away, and it's true. We can talk about how the left bullied us into giving away Gush Katif, and we had Oslo and all these things. And my answer to that as well is, and people say, well, we'll come when Mashiach comes, when there's a religious government. And I always say, if 1 million religious Jews would come here, we'd have a religious government,
Right?
right? We'd have a religious country, right? We would have all the, all these things. We wouldn't be giving away any land. And if we
Right?
would have the Jews coming here and residing in all these places, the Arabs wouldn't be fighting us the way they're fighting us either, because the amount of land that we would need for Jews to reside in would be growing. So,
Right?
all the things that we say, oh, it's a sham, it's a sham, it's a sham. And if it's like this, you said something so pertinently beautiful. And it's so true. And it's not easy to live here. It's not easy to live here because it's like a mesh of so many different cultures, and so much needs to be built. But you said something so beautiful. You don't have to come to Israel when it's perfect. You have to come to Israel to be part of building
Right?
this us as a Jewish people, to become the light unto the nations. And you're so right, Avi, because we are on the forefront of everything. Look at the Jewish people. We are on the forefront of the world's survival, of fighting evil, of showing the world, like, and I'm not saying, listen, I know it's not an easy thing. I have family there and grandchildren, whatever. But it's like the question that everybody needs to ask themselves: why am I continuing to live outside of Eretz Yisrael, especially as a frum Jew? What is my motivation? And I think that we all have to be honest about what the motivation is. We're used to a certain way of life. We're used to certain things that we want to continue to have. But it comes to the question of, how long are you going to put up with that? The demographics in the world, and that's another point I want to bring up before, the demographics in the world is changing. The progressiveness of the Christian world has created a vacuum where Islam is now filling that vacuum and filling up the world. And in a generation when we Jews will no longer have any clout, first of all, we're intermarrying at 80-something%, right? The younger generation is being schooled in the hate of the Jew and the hate of Israel. And I'll tell you something else. We have an obligation to build this country up, because we have to make it indispensable to the world. Because if we don't, Avi, in 10, 20 years from now, when the governments of the world are going to be progressive Michiganis, if we're not going to be a strong Israel, I don't know what to say.
Right. And that ties in exactly with what I was saying earlier, how I started the talk, where our purpose is to be a regional power. And the
Right.
biggest thing stopping us from being, and again, a regional power in order to bring good and morality and truth
Right.
to all of humanity. And the
Right.
biggest thing stopping us from being a regional power is our own Jewish shadow. We're so afraid of being too Jewish. We're so
Right.
afraid of standing up for ourselves. Forget about protecting the Jews. We're afraid of protecting ourselves. We don't want to do what's necessary to protect ourselves. not just in Israel, but even more so, Jews abroad. We're just afraid of what the Goyim are going to say. We're afraid of how our neighbors are going to think about us or talk to us, or they want to invite us for Chagim, or we want to what to talk about at the Shabbat table. We're afraid of our own shadow. And first of all, that fear is really a galut mentality, because the geula mentality, and Baruch Hashem, I'm Zocha, I'm a Talmud, I'm a student of Rav Drukman's, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, who was a student of Tzvi Yehuda Kook, Zatzal, so I am blessed to have learned Torah at Eretz Yisrael and Emunah, and giving over that Torah to Eretz Yisrael and Emunah over to my boy, our boys, we have 4 boys. And when you have that emunah and you have that understanding of the holiness of the Jewish people, specifically living here in our ancestral homeland that God gave us, and understand we're the chosen people with a purpose, not because we're better. We're no better than anyone else. We're the same as everyone else, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us a purpose, and that purpose with the Torah living in Israel is to be this regional power to do good. And you're able to internalize that with the air when you're living in your natural habitat. It's almost impossible to internalize that and bring our children up when we're not living in this natural habitat, because that's just it. When you're a second-class citizen and you delude yourself that you're not a second-class citizen, but you're always afraid of what the Goyim are going to think, right? And when we still have a Golet mentality here in Israel, plenty of Jews and even of our leaders still think that way. And that's why I view my voice and the Pulse of Israel as being on the front line to inspire and instill this true understanding of our purpose as a people on the national level and as an individual level, so we can be growing with the consciousness, so that we then demand that our leaders act as we're supposed to act as a Jewish people in our homeland, as the regional superpower to protect humanity from the growing evil that exists, because God created good and evil and the freedom of choice. And we are the maglador of light and morality because of the Torah, to assist everyone in the world to choose good, to choose morality, to choose Hashem, and to get over the fear of being too Jewish.
Avi, before I open it up, because there's a few questions, I just want to ask you one thing. I know that you're a fan of Netanyahu, and I'm just curious. He has been prime minister for 20 years. And yes, supposedly, I don't know what his religious affiliation is. I heard he's not a believer. I don't know if that's not true or not. And I just wonder, from somebody who looks in, I am wondering where that support lies, because he, no matter, even if he wasn't notified about October 7th, we now know that he wasn't notified about October 7th, but we do know, Avi, that he was part of the narrative of building up Gaza, Gush Katif, Gaza, Hamas, and even I got to tell you, Yehuda v'Shamron, we have a hotbed of terrorists in Yehuda v'Shamron, and under his watch, Avi, why were all these posts, these posts that were settlements that were being built up, why were they constantly being bulldozed? Why were boys being thrown into prison in what's it called, detention, without lawyers? These are all questions that, I understand that, Sid Rosenberg was here. So I was somewhere where he spoke on Shabbos, and he said, it's the best thing to be a Jew now. You have Trump, you have Netanyahu, he knows lots of people. It's true. Maybe other people couldn't do what he's done, but there's so many questions, like, why did he allow this war to go on for a year and a half? Why did we lose 900 boys? Like, there's so many things. And is there anything that's more positive politically that is coming up that we can look forward to? And I said to my husband the other day, and I want you to answer this. I said to him, we've almost allowed mediocrity into our governments, because we don't just need someone who's on the right and the left and religious and secular. We need people who want to build this country also economically, and we need to make this country strong in all different types of ways.
Nomi, how much time do I have to answer that question? I could send you 20 Pulse of Israel videos that help answer that question, each and every single point you made. All right, let me try to answer this in as concise a manner as possible. And basically, you gave me the plug to allow me to tell people, anyone who really wants to understand this on a deeper level and on a daily basis, because these are issues and questions that come up on a daily basis during dealing with the daily news cycle, well, I highly suggest for you to go sign up for my daily Pulse of Israel video updates at pulseofisrael.com, because I go into this on a daily basis, and definitely contact me with any follow-up questions and answers. And as we say in Judaism, on one leg, al regel achat, I want to clarify my support for Netanyahu. I always say Netanyahu is the best of all realistic options to be leading the Jewish state of Israel today. All other realistic options are horrible. And that if there was someone better, I'd be realistically better. I'd be rooting for someone realistically better. I mean, I was a follower and an activist and a partner in some ways with Moshe Feiglin for years. I was involved with him, got involved with him back in the 1990s. I was involved in the protests against the Oslo talks out in the streets with my mother and my son were in jail with Rabbi Riskin protesting the Dagan Hill. Right, I'm here since the beginning days of this insanity that done by our own governments. So I know it all, and I was there. And Moshe Feiglin he says it like it is about mostly everything, if not everything. But he's not a realistic option to be a prime minister. What?
But he's re-entering politics. He's going to re-enter politics.
Yeah, but if it's impossible, it's almost impossible for him to be a prime minister. Meaning for his party to get enough votes to be prime minister. It's just not happening right now with the consciousness. I hope he gets in, and I hope he's influential. But I'm just clarifying that my support for Netanyahu is always in this understanding he is the best we got in the realistic options that are available. And that's how I explain things. And then I explain why he does things. Okay. So first of all, I don't know about his religious level. I do know he is a big believer in the Tanakh. He has Tanakh study sessions in his house with people. I don't know whether once a week or used to have it once a week. He is a student of, his father, Ben Zion Netanyahu, was a professor of history. He is a big believer in history. He knows the importance of history. But two important points to understand Netanyahu and his leadership. Number one is he is a classic conservative. A classic conservative is someone who is very much about conserving, meaning the non-conservatives, the liberals, they're willing to destroy and change things like that. Political decisions, projects. That's what non-conservatives do. Conservatives are people who are like, no, we're going to conserve the way it is and little by little make incremental changes, not to totally shake the system. All right, so that's one thing to understand about Netanyahu. So that's why even though there are problems that should have been taken care of decades ago,
right,
he doesn't work on them until he knows that there is the public support necessary and the understanding necessary that it'll be worked on. For instance, I'll give you an example. I've been screaming about the need for judicial reform for over 2 decades.
Right.
And I had talks with politicians 2 decades ago. All right. And they're like, they didn't understand the need for judicial reform. So, and Netanyahu was the biggest defender of the justice system all these years. All right. There was no way he was going to be pushing for judicial reform 20 years ago. He pushed for it before the last elections because of only one reason. Because enough of the public in Israel understood that it was necessary to be done. And finally, he supported judicial reform. Now, I want to give the other side of the coin. Right now, this is live information, and this is in the headlines. I don't know how many people understand these headlines or are paying attention to these headlines. The government of Israel, under its legal right, around a month ago, made the decision to fire the head of Israeli intelligence agency, basically like the FBI,
Ronen
right?
Bar, yeah.
A month ago, Ronen Bar, he was fired.
Mm-hmm.
The government and the prime minister has every right, according to the law, black and white in the law books. No
Mm-hmm.
reason necessary. They decide to fire him, he's fired. Guess what? He's still serving as intelligence head of intelligence. Why? Because the justice system
Right.
has been backing him up illegally. There is no legal argument for any court of law, especially a Supreme Court, to be hearing a case against the government firing an employee when it's black and white law that the government can fire that employee.
Mm-hmm.
So people have to, and this is a situation not today, but this is now out in the open. I knew about this 3 decades ago, that we're living in a judicial dictatorship. Israel is not a democracy. And again, when I'm talking about this, this is why I want people to make Aliyah, not to not come here. We have issues to fix. We want you here to help us fix them, because that's your purpose as a Jew, not to give this as an excuse. Oh, I'm not coming because of this. No. Well, you don't think there are problems in the justice system in America also? You just don't know about them because it hasn't affected you. Well, in Israel, every single issue affects all of us, so we know about all these things. But here we can make a difference. Can you make a difference in the justice system in New York State with all the corruption there, or with your governor's corruption? Come on, there's corruption all over the place. Just doesn't affect you, so you don't know about it. In Israel, because we're a small country and it's our representatives, and everything impacts us, we know about these things and we complain about these things. But here we can make a difference about them directly. But so this is the situation for 30 years. So Netanyahu has not been able to make changes regarding Gaza, regarding Judea and Samaria, regarding judicial reform, anything. I'll give you another example. We here are dealing with a progressive bureaucracy in everywhere, but especially in the education system. You go to public schools, if you don't go, Israeli schools are public schools, right? They're almost free. But if you do not go to a religious public school in Israel, you're being taught more about Islam and Christianity and gender insanity than you're being taught about Judaism. Now, Likud has been in power for years. Guess what? Doesn't make a difference. We can have the strongest, best minister of education who talks the right talk. But if all the bureaucrats, all the unelected officials who you can't fire, right? You can't fire them according to law because of socialist bureaucracies. And they don't implement the changes the minister wants. And they're continuing to push their own agenda, which is progressivism, which is anti-Jewish. No matter how many governments we have, no matter how many religious ministers of education we're going to have, that's not going to change until we change the system that you can actually fire an unelected government employee who does not follow the directives of the minister. So you're talking about a system that it's built to stop any right-wing religious government from implementing the changes we want to make. And the only way we're going to be able to make any of those changes is if we first make the changes to the justice system, because that is where they put democracy. They say democracy is the justice system. They're the only ones who protect democracy. Well, they're the most anti-democratic entity in all of the state of Israel. And I wish more rabbis would talk what I'm about to tell you. Very, very simple Rashi. Tzedek, tzedek tirdof. And Rashi asks, why do we have the word tzedek twice? Once is enough. Tzedek tirdof. Why tzedek, tzedek tirdof? And Rashi tells us, tzedek is mentioned twice because the people who are most in position to be corrupted and not do justice are who? The judges. They're the ones who have all the power to be doing justice or doing injustice, whether it's a bribe or it's not a bribe, whether it's a conflict of interest. And the biggest place of injustice today in Israel is the justice system itself. So that doesn't even allow the government to fire an employee, the head of intelligence, who according to law has every right to. And we can't have our correct. Now understand this. Why haven't we been able to do defensively what's possible? Well, if they're forbidding the government from firing the head of intelligence, What do you think the response would have been 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, if Netanyahu decided we have to destroy Hamas in Gaza? We have to send tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of soldiers into Gaza in order to ensure that there's never a massacre. What do you think the response would have been from the mass media and the political left here in Israel? They would have said Netanyahu's insane. He's a warmonger. We're not going to send our children. Right? And that's
Human
how he's
rights,
a conservative.
Right.
He only believed and he only knew that he had the support of the public and hence the mainstream media to go and do a massive operation to destroy Hamas because of the massacre of October 7th. This is the Galut mentality that exists within us that we have to push out. And that's why nothing's happening in terms of the Palestinian Authority in Judea and Samaria. Netanyahu knows the Palestinian Authority is the same as Hamas, but he can't do anything about it because in his mind, there is not enough public awareness about it, and something bad has to happen, whether within the Palestinian Authority or proves it in a way that there will be enough support to finally send the troops in and properly destroy the danger of the Palestinian Authority, Islamo-Nazis, and that Trump's immigration plan also happens in Judea and Samaria, the same as Gaza. He's not able to do that now, even though he knows it. He knows it, but there's no public support for it, and he would be stopped because the mass media would push how he's a warmonger and no, the Palestinian Authority, we have agreements, and you can't go against the... That is the reality of the Jewish state of Israel today. And again, I want people not to be demoralized by that. I want people to be empowered by that because we have a role. You, and me. And that role is one, understanding what's really going on beyond the headlines. And that's what my Pulse of Israel daily program provides. And be empowered to make a difference. Obviously, the bigger difference you can make is by being here in Israel. But if you're not here in Israel yet, reach out to me and find out what you can do to make a difference while you're still not here yet. And most importantly, it's by sharing these information and messages and Pulse of Israel videos so more people can understand what's really going on that we're not understanding, because even wonderful, good-meaning, religious, pro-Judea and Samaria Jews like yourself do not have the depth of knowledge, of understanding of a very, very deep, deep reality that is taking place that blinds us from what's really going on. I mean, on a daily basis, we're being divided to hate each other. I mean, it's insane. This protest movement is all about how Netanyahu and his government have been mafkir the hostages. They want them to die. And you asked this specific question: why is the war still going on 19 months? It's going on because Netanyahu has not been leading this war to win it and to destroy Hamas. He's been fighting this war on a low flame in order to try to save as many hostages as possible, to try to ensure as much unity within the Jewish people as possible, because no matter, even if he'd save everyone except one, even if one would be left, they would be continuing with a massive disinformation, demoralization, anti-Jewish, anti-Netanyahu, anti-Smutrich, anti-Ben Gvir campaign that they want him to die in Gaza, even if only one's left. And Netanyahu knows that. So that's why we're still fighting for 19 months, and we haven't yet won this war. And it saddens me to no end reading op-eds and articles that bash him, and that he's only in this war and making it because of political reasons to stay in power, and it's the religious right that they're horrible and they just want war, and it's all about building settlements in Gaza, and I'm not going to send my son to serve. No, it's because he's doing everything, which you could say, you can have an argument. You can have a halachic argument whether Netanyahu's doing the right thing, because he has to protect 10 million Israeli citizens, and we're going to lose hundreds of soldiers in trying to save 24 live hostages. Is it the right thing to sacrifice hundreds or thousands of soldiers' lives and the potential worlds that they represent in order to save 24 live hostages? That is a deep conversation. I'm not going to tell you what's right or wrong, but it's a discussion, and it's not simple, and it's a moral issue. But if you are listening to the news on a day in and day out basis in the Jewish world, brainwashed with a bring them home campaign that should have been a let them go campaign.
Right, exactly.
Let my people go campaign.
Let my people go, exactly.
That's the message of Jews. They're the bad guys. Let my people go. Bring
Right.
them home.
That's what I've
But
always said.
people don't understand the subconscious brainwashing we've been put through by a
Right.
brilliant anti-Netanyahu, anti-right-wing public
Right.
marketing campaign, because it automatically puts the guilt on
On
Netanyahu and
us.
his government. They're the ones at fault. You have to bring them home because you're at fault. We're Jews. We have it in the Torah. Let my people go. We use that. I was at the Soviet, the Free Soviet Jewry rallies in New York City back in the 1980s. Let my people go. And yet today, the Jewish campaign for the biggest tragedy of hundreds of our hostages taken into Gaza, we couldn't use a Jewish slogan that makes sense, and we had to come up with a foreign one that people don't understand. It was brilliantly thought of
Right.
specifically to put the guilt on ourselves and deflect it from where it really is. People do not understand how we are being manipulated every single second of every day. And again, not enough people understand when they're reading these headlines and they're not being told what's really going on. They're not being told what's really going on beyond these headlines, who's pulling the strings, why it's being done. And that's the voice that we try to give at the Pulse of Israel. And again, we want to be bigger and be able to reach more people. And for that, we need donations. So I'm just going to put a selfless plug. Anyone interested in helping support the support we do to be able to reach more Jews and impact more youth and be bigger and more like a Jewish Dennis Prager, PragerU type outfit that's pushing it out and reaching the hundreds of thousands and millions, we're here to partner with in order to be able to make that difference and be part of bringing and creating this old new Jewish consciousness to be able to really be who we're supposed to be, the Jewish people, the Jewish nation in our ancestral homelands.
Okay, Avi, it's getting really, really late. It's over 6 o'clock here in Eretz Yisrael. I'm gonna, Mazal and Debbie, really quick questions, really, really quick. And then we're gonna let Avi go. Mazal, go ahead. Quick, please,
Oh,
please,
okay.
quickly.
Thank you so much. So, I live here in Queens, and the people that living here, the large Jewish community. One part is Jews who left Israel in the 80s. They've been here already, 30, 40 years, and also Jews that came from Russia, same time frame. And it takes a while to settle, and it's exhausting. And even just to send their kids to Israel to learn for a year, people are very afraid. They're like, no, we can't. The whole mentality of going from one place to another is exhausting for a lot of Jews. And also just even they're not even thinking of Israel to move there. They're like, okay, we just came here, we're settling. So how do you approach that? How do you speak to that, exhausted people who have been in Israel, have been through those things at this point? They're only here for 30, 40 years. So
Well,
how
you
do you
know what?
talk to
One
them
of the
about going
ways,
to Israel?
if I can interject for a second, like, if Jews saw the writing on the wall, right, and they would be pushed against the wall to have to leave, there wouldn't be an exhaustion. There would be a sense of, I have to do this. And I think that if you look at the demographics and you look at what's happening, and you look at Paterson, New Jersey, they have named the main street Palestine, right? They have now declared that Paterson, New Jersey, which is right around the corner from you, is now the fourth holiest site in Islam. Look what they were just trying to do in Texas. It's just a matter of time. And the question is that how much it's going beyond. Listen, everybody's exhausted. Who's not exhausted? We Jews in Israel are utterly exhausted. We've gone through the last almost 2 years hell. What about all the mothers who are exhausted, who've lost sons, and all the widows, and all the families of hostages? It's not easy to be a Jew, and it's not easy to make these choices, just like it's not easy to make the choice. Secular Jews will tell you it's not easy to be a Jew that keeps Shabbat. And university students in America who are Jewish will tell you it's exhausting to be a Jew in university now. It's choices that we have to make all the time. Those are the choices that we as Jews have to make all the time. And I think it's looking at the facts, understanding what Israel stands for us, how important it is to build it up, and becoming a independent people. Like we have to, and really asking ourselves, and I'm not saying it, I'm not saying it judgmentally, because I feel every day sometimes that it's hard to be here. But why, you know, really we have to be honest. Jews want an easier lifestyle, right? We want it easier. We have that need to, you know, and and so I don't know, I mean, it's choices, and it's asking the questions, and we can build it here, and the demographics are against everybody in Chutz La'aretz. It's just really a matter of time. And it's like Pinchas Winston has said for many, many years, like, do you want to wait? I have friends now in Canada who are telling me they want to sell their homes. And the market is not good. And you look at the Canadian dollar, like, even if you want to go to America from Canada, and even if you want to come to Israel, the Canadian dollar is in the toilets. And you're going to have this guy Carney now for 4 years. So, the question is, how long is Trump going to be able to hold it back? 3.5 years? You can be looking at someone like AOC in 3.5 years.
Yeah, so Mazel, great question. I actually just last week I was interviewed about my Aliyah story, and this question came up as well. And the whole issue of growing Jew hatred, anti-Semitism in the West, America, was raised, and the person kept on asking me, but what about pushing the growing anti-Semitism? And my answer is like this. I believe I'll start from the end. Okay, they'll start from the end. When people ask me for advice about Aliyah, regardless of how old their children are, and again, I tell everyone, regardless of how old your children are young, your children are teenagers, come. Challenging. It's going to be challenging no matter how old you are, no matter how old your children are. You're going to have challenges. All right, but there's support system in place today to help you, regardless of what what age your child is. The one success factor for a successful Aliyah, whether for an individual or for a family, is that they know they're coming to live in Israel for one reason and one reason only, because it's home. The second you know you're coming home, there's nowhere to go back to. Right? Because there are plenty of families who do make Aliyah and have a hard time. But so long as you understand, you have, and again, life is much easier today than it was when my family made Aliyah in 1990, or me and my wife came in 2002, because we lived in Riverdale for 5 years. Like, we came here in the second Intifada. I came with my wife and our firstborn son, left a great career in New York City, management consulting. The economy here was horrible. It was the second Intifada. I came back in order to be part of the war, to be called up, because I couldn't sit in America. I mean, we were planning on coming back anyway after 5 years, but I couldn't sit in America when a war was taking place, and I wanted to be here. It took me half a year to find a job, right? But I was home. And anyone who understands they're coming home, and they give over that understanding to their children that they're coming home, they're going to make it work, because you don't have anywhere to go back to. You understand, America was not home. America was just the temporary place you were living as a stepping stone for coming home. And for all of you in Miami or in Florida that you left New York, I always told the New Yorkers who are moving to Florida, all right, your next that's it. Your next stop is Israel. You're in the Golden Medina, what's left of America right now in Florida, but the next stop is Israel. But that is the only thing. And in terms of all the Israelis who have left Israel and Russian Jews who went to America, the bottom line is there's not a deep enough understanding for all Jews. And this is not every Jew in Israel understands this, but definitely those who've left Israel, and for Jews who are not yet living in Israel. Israel is our home. And that's only education. Again, some people are going to run away because of the growing anti-Semitism. Some people. But majority, again, I'm a student of Jewish history. Most are going to stay. And I'm here to try to save as many Jews as possible and come home to Israel and live in Israel and not be stuck. Because like Naomi was saying before, what's happening in France, what's happening, Australia just went total left and the Muslims are taking over. England, Britain, now Canada's fallen. America, I believe also, Trump is a stopgap. So now it's going to be 3.5 years, but who knows what's going to be. And again, what I try to help you, I'm a huge Trump supporter. But guess what? There's a woke right growing in the conservative Republican side. Tucker Carlson has millions and tens of millions of followers. It's not just going to be AOC and a woke anti-Semitic left. It's growing on the right, and it's from the Muslims, and they're growing power in America, and they have a plan. I mean, I can show you the videos where they talk to themselves in America. In 5 years, we're going to have 50 congressmen, and in 10 years, we're going to have 100 congressmen. They're working at it. They're working at changing America from within. From within. So anyone who thinks that America is going to be like it is today and safe for Jews to live in like you feel today, and it's not like we felt back in the 80s or 90s, it's a different America, it's never going back to that, I can sell you the Brooklyn Bridge. But I don't want people coming to Israel because of that. And most will not, because they're afraid of change. They're too afraid of change and not as much inspired about coming home. And my goal is to inspire as many Jews as possible, as many grandparents as possible, as many parents as possible, as many youth as possible, to be inspired by being a proud Jew, the most blessed generation to be living as a Jew, where all we have to do is hop on a plane to come to Israel and be able to live in our ancestral homeland and no longer say next year in Jerusalem at the Pesach Seder and not mean it. I mean, we just had Pesach and you all said next year in Jerusalem. How many of you really meant it? And again, I'm not trying to be confrontational or whatever, but I just want people to internalize more. We pray for the building of the Beit HaMikdash 3 times a day, even in Israel. And Jews in Israel aren't thinking about that. But that's the ultimate sign of sovereignty, that the Jews are back and that God is the centrality. Are there going to be korbanos? They're not going to be korbanos. I have no clue. That's out of my league. But I do know that there is a reason, not just for us, but for humanity, that the Beit HaMikdash is built. That's a symbol that God is the center of our universe and the center of humanity. It's the place that all nations of the world are invited to pray together on, not just the Jews. And by us deluding ourselves and our rabbis telling us, oh no, we can't build it. Oh no, the Goyim, oh no. The Goyim are going to be the most inspired of all the second we build the Beit HaMikdash. They're going to be happier than we are.
Okay, Avi, I'm going to let Debbie ask the last question, and then we're going to 6 o'clock in Eretz Yisrael.
Okay, I'll try to make it fast.
Debbie.
Thank you, Naomi, for inviting Avi, and thank you, Avi, for your advocacy. I follow you. I've watched you on Pulse of Israel. I missed a few minutes, so I don't know. Did you speak about the map behind you?
I didn't. Would you like me to?
So I just want to highlight it. I think it's
but literally just a few minutes.
Yeah.
Just a few.
I don't want to talk about it because you know about it. Is there any initiative to distribute this relief map? It shows the religious basis of our connection to Eretz Yisrael or the Shvatim, but it also shows a 3D strategic. Yeah, the strategic
is there an initiative?
You know,
nobody just gave me the idea, because we're talking about putting together packages to be able to send out to Jews and Israel supporters around the world, and putting little gifts inside in terms of information and stuff to help them better understand the situation. So that's definitely something that we could be giving out as a gift.
So I'd be interested of being part of it. That's all.
Oh, wonderful. So Debbie, reach out to me. All right. And again, best way to reach out to me, again, selfless plug, pulseofisrael.com to sign up for the newsletter, daily video. Naomi can give you my email address to contact me. You could say you were here on this Zoom. Whatever comments, questions, remind me I was on the Nishmat Zoom. And b'simcha, any way I can help. I see some comments here. Our families, we have family members, we want to come, or family members don't want to come. How do I deal with it? What do I do? Please, b'simcha, I am always here to help, especially anyone seriously thinking or wanting assistance to be able to make Aliyah and go through that process with their family. So do not hesitate. Send me an email. I can't promise you I'm going to respond immediately, but I will respond as soon as I can. And if I don't, follow up with me and I will get back to you. And definitely, if you come to Israel, contact me. We'd love to meet you. We'd love to host you. We'd love to show you some of the beautiful and inspiring sites with a different twist, so you can internalize a little more than a regular tour. And thank you so much for having me. And understand, we are living in Geula times, and we feel it here in Israel more than anywhere else. And it's such a shame not to be experiencing that and to be withholding that experience from your children, to have that higher level of consciousness and understanding and living as a Jew in these times where you feel it here in Eretz Yisrael.
Thank you, Avi. Thank you so much. Debbie, are you still in Israel?
No, I I
Okay.
went back a few days ago, but I'm still
Okay.
trying to be on your Zooms.
Okay.
they're
Okay.
great.
Thanks,
Naomi,
Debbie. Okay.
Naomi,
was amazing.
Thank you, everyone.
Naomi.
Thank you. Thank you, Avi. Amazing.
Thank
Thank
you,
you so
Avi.
much. It's
Avi,
so
Thank you,
late
Na-
here in Eretz Yisrael.
Naomi.
Avi,
Someone
maybe-
asked on,
Thank